Welcome to the Guna Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. And what a game we have to talk about. Arsenal 4, Manchester City 3. Just the first instalment of a very enjoyable Sunday of Arsenal teams taking on Manchester City. Declan Rice noticed it. I saw when he did his little video for Arsenal's social media after the men beat City by 5 goals to 1. It was a little bit tighter. Perhaps it shouldn't have been at the Joy Stadium in the lunchtime kickoff. Daisy Goodhand, you were there. Were you able to get back in time for any of the men's game? I made it to the pub at about 55 minutes and we conceded straight away. And then from there, it was just a fantastic, fantastic game. What was your experience on the day?
Yeah, fantastic. And luckily I got back in time, got back about 20 past 4, so I actually didn't miss any of it,
Oh,
which is
perfect.
really good. But yeah, another fantastic away day. Probably one of the best in terms of staying after the game. We saw that on I'm sure everyone who tuned in on Sky saw that as well. Post-match interviews we were singing in the background. We stayed for Renee to do her interview as well. So yeah, fantastic away day as per usual, and a thrilling game as well. I mean, like you say, potentially some of those goals for City may be a bit controversial. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But in terms of the goals that Arsenal scored and staying in the game and changing the game, it's another fantastic management from Renee, I think, in terms of game management, and being able to actually Arsenal finish off a game for once compared to what we used to see. Maybe in another scenario in the past that wouldn't have gone our way.
Yeah, for me, it was a chance of, obviously you can talk about the penalty, but for me, Arsenal had probably two or three clear-cut chances to really put the game to bed at various points in the game. But yeah, as you say with the fans, I mean, I stayed and got the work done while just after full time, and I filmed a bit of. I've just was filming as Lotta was sort of tapping her badge again and being serenaded by the fans, and then I went into the press conference room, and we must have been in there for half hour, 40 minutes before Gareth Taylor came in, and Renee was literally waiting outside to come in straight after Taylor finished, and I kept hearing songs and there's noise coming from the opposite side where the Arsenal fans were, and they just stayed around for all of these interviews, and of course with Jen Beattie and also Steph Horton, both of those played for both of the teams, of course, but every time Beattie, because she was so recently an Arsenal player, every time she's on punditry, she gets a great reception. I mean, most of the pundits seem to be ex-Arsenal players, but there's something about, when they go and do these interviews over by the Arsenal fans, that was one of the moments that actually persuaded Renee she wanted the job after the
Yeah.
United game because of the reception. It's a slightly strange atmosphere on Sunday, I have to say, at the Joy Stadium. There were sort of empty seats scattered around the ground, and it was the Arsenal fans who made most of the noise. But another memorable afternoon, and the noise coming from the away end was fantastic.
Yeah, look, and I discussed this with somebody at the start of the game when we first arrived. I thought, it didn't look as full as it had done. I reflected back on obviously last season when we went to the Joy Stadium, a very different kind of scenario for the City fans as well. Obviously, they were at the time before the game chasing the title, and had they won that game against Arsenal at the Joy, I imagine that would have been quite a statement win in terms of basically going ahead of Chelsea or near enough matching Chelsea to take them all the way to the final day. What turned out to be a disastrous day for them in terms of dropping the points in the last sort of minutes of the game and Arsenal getting the win and single-handedly handing it to Chelsea. So I do think it was different in that sense, but I was surprised that, the only noise that really came was when the goals were scored and, an occasional chant here and there. But that is what Arsenal fans will pride themselves on. And post match, I mean, we stayed until pretty much the stewards came and said, right, guys, you've got to go now. I think I was actually the last one to leave the stand, which just kind of proves that point. But yeah, but we even, with Renee, she was waiting ages to do the interview. We waited with her. We chanted, Renee, what's the score? She had a little chuckle, but she didn't she's not quite at the level yet where she's willing to put up the little 4-3 hand symbols. But yeah, no, it was great. Lotta got her flowers as well. Obviously, fantastic performance from her. Mariona obviously getting player of the match, and yeah, Jen filming us for a TikTok. So it all really was going off as well in that sense. But look, it was a game that had us on the edge of our seats. It was stressful at times. It was frustrating, the goals that were conceded. Arsenal pride themselves, I think, at the moment on those clean sheets. So I do think it was a different defence to what we've seen. Catley moving back to her left back position, Lotta slotting in and doing a great job, but there were still moments where City exploited us, and we're going to have to be aware of that. Obviously, playing them again, and kind of we can definitely expose their defence just as much as they could ours at times as well. So definitely lots to talk about and lots to think about going forward.
Yeah, let's start with the starting lineups. Obviously, the headline for me was Stina Blackstenius starting up front. I think there are, obviously real tactical reasons behind that, but I do think there is an element, and Rene touched on this after the game, of actually when a player is in such good form against a certain side. Of course, there are footballing reasons for that, but also that mental one up you can get over your opponent, and the fact that she's going back there. She was the one who essentially stripped City of the title last season. She's always the hero when Arsenal play against them. And as it transpired, even though she missed the chances, the fact she was in the position for so many chances showed why she is that player who often has so much joy against Manchester City. Mariona and Cooney Cross in midfield meant that I think we knew Valti would be in limited minutes. I did expect her to come on at half time. I'm not quite. I guess that her coming on with 20 minutes to go is as much as she could give, by the sound of it. So again, Arsenal sort of playing with players who aren't quite at full fitness, but they're able to use what they have. No surprise to see Wubben Moy come in alongside Williamson, Catley moving to left back with McCabe suspended, and then Caitlin Ford not in the squad at all, which saw Russo move to left wing. My biggest fear, I think, was Arsenal losing that midfield battle. I think Yui Hasegawa, in large parts of a lot of meetings between these two, is pivotal, and she's an excellent player. And alongside Jess Park and Jill Roord obviously, knows Arsenal well. It felt like if Arsenal couldn't get a hold of that midfield with the attacking threats that City had, it was going to be tough. But I thought Caldente did well, sitting inside there along Kyra Cooney Cross. But what were your thoughts on the team? Because it was not, I don't want to say threadbare because we've seen worse, in our
Yeah.
time as Arsenal fans, but it definitely felt like we're quite far from full strength. And, any win here is going to be quite a feat with the players that were available.
Yeah, and it is a bit concerning, as you say, there was makeshift, I think, decisions made in terms of Stina starting. You'd obviously like to have the likes of Stina Blackstenius to bring on in a game like that, because if we look at the impact that she has had against Manchester City, it has been coming on as sort of a super sub. My first thought initially wasn't even the starting 11, it was look at the bench, because if you're going up against the likes of City, those big teams, you don't want your only attacking option off the bench to be Kafaji, and that's not a reflection on her. It's about Arsenal having, we talked about this a lot. Chelsea had Guru Rice and Aggie Beaver Jones bringing on, and we had sort of whoever we have left over, and maybe that's not as great of a squad depth as we would like. I know injuries have hit. I would have liked to see if they've seen Caitlin Ford in a game like that. I think it would have suited her. I think it would have suited McCabe with sort of the space that was there on the wings when Arsenal countered quickly. Mead obviously finding herself in a lot of space, and a dodgy lineswoman kind of calling her offside every single time. But it's those kind of decisions that Arsenal made. I think first half, looking at the starting 11, we did at times, I think, not perform as well. We obviously took a 2-0 lead, before the 12th minute, which is huge in terms of a game like that. But we actually didn't perform that well, in my opinion, first half. And second half, I thought we did really well. But if you talk about game management, going 2-0 up when you're trying to counter, when you're trying to go against a City side that we know are defensively poor at the moment, it's very clever, because it was a mistake that led to the goal within the first, 40 seconds, 50 seconds of the game. It was a set piece delivery from Kyra and a great finish from Wubben Moy that led Arsenal. We already did a 2-0 advantage, but City were pushing a lot in that first half, and it did kind of take that second half of switching things up and trying to change the way that things were operating for us to actually have much success. Individual, players did really well in that game. I thought Kyra handled the pressure extremely well. And actually, if you're talking about that midfield battle, she pretty much at times took that as her own. We've seen the compilations. She's turning the likes of Rod and Hasegawa in midfield, and creating space for herself, and that's obviously worked. With Mariona as well, trying to find Marlon in behind. Obviously, the goal that we conceded where Mariona kind of gave it away does kind of show you have to be switched on. Those moments, you can't be complacent in the box. And yeah, I think I was a bit surprised to see Stina start back to that point. I think that's just a reflection of Arsenal not having those options, or not being able to have the likes of Kafaji starting in a game like that. I don't personally like Russo on the wing. I do think it nullifies her as the striker that she's been this season. I think she's a goal scorer, and I think she probably would have taken a lot of those chances had she been in that number 9 position that Arsenal were presented with. Doesn't mean she doesn't put a shift in every single time she plays. She holds the ball up. But then obviously that's dragging Catley out a little bit. And actually, the second half, we saw more from Catley getting forward than we did in the first half. So it does work in some ways. But I think for me, I didn't like the decision of Russo on the wing. But it is concerning that that was the only option that was presented to us at this point in the season.
Yeah, that's interesting because the way I looked at it was it's the right tactical decision to have. If you could have Steena's runs in behind combined with Russo's finishing, you'd have an incredible striker who would have
Yeah,
probably scored a hat trick on Sunday. But the way you phrase it, and actually there wasn't a lot else Renee Slagers can do. I fully agree with that, but I do think maybe Steena would have started anyway if Arsenal did have a bit more. I mean, looking at the subs, so Leah Valti comes on, she only had 20 minutes on her legs. Rosa Kafaji, obviously not a regular starter, came on with 2 minutes to go. Amanda Ilestedt, recently back from maternity leave, came on with seconds to go. And then you had two goalkeepers, Jenna Nighswonger, who's on off season, when she was signed from Gotham. Laia Cadena, fair enough, great centre back. Katie Reed, still a teenager, probably you're not going to throw her on in that game. And then Neve Peacock, who's still waiting for her Arsenal debut, an academy player. City didn't have loads, but Carolyn and Bunny Shaw coming on with 25 minutes
yeah,
to go. What was the feeling like in the away end then? Because I think a lot of people, I said to Tim Stillman once we got those lineups, I said Arsenal have got to start well. They've
yeah,
got there's no point them chasing a game, in the dying embers because they're going to really struggle with what they have to bring off the bench against this City side. Obviously, it was a dream start for Arsenal, and then it became difficult after that, but still with keeping Shaw and Carolyn quiet after they came on. Ruben Moy seems to have Bunny Shaw's number. It's really
yeah.
interesting. He relishes that battle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously you can imagine the fear that City are able to bring on. I know I saw that from the very start of the lineup. I thought that front three for City that started was a bit different to what I'd expected, but I actually thought they did fantastic, and it wasn't really them to blame really that they lost that game. Obviously, I don't think it has been that their attacking that's been the problem by any means. They've scored fantastic goals. I thought Fujino had a fantastic game against Catley. Miedemar scored. And I think obviously they're without, the likes of Lauren Hemp, and obviously the problems are coming for City defensively without Alex Greenwood. Massive, massive loss for them. Clearly, they've just lost that completely. Keating, Alexandri making mistakes left, right, and centre. And it's obviously a lack of confidence that they've got in themselves at the moment. It's got to be something that City work on. But I think 100% that was tactical from Renee Slagers. Absolutely. Like without a shadow of a doubt, going 2-0 up sort of that early on in the game, capitalising on defensive weakness, it gave Arsenal that chance that they know we haven't got the same amount of subs that you have, but if we can give ourselves so much of a chance, finishing our chances, creating chances and scoring goals, it's going to be a game that City can't get back into. And Bonnie Shaw does scare me because I think I saw the mistake that Mariona had made giving it to Miedemar, and I thought we do that again in front of Bonnie
Mhm.
Shaw, and that's going in the back of the net. So fantastic from our defence in terms of keeping her quiet. I thought both centre backs had a very good game, and I've got to credit the players who don't get it, like Emily Fox, who I thought again had a fantastic game. She ran from right back to left wing at one point and had to be brought down by Jill Ward, practically jumping on her back to stop her. So I think people did step up a lot in that game, and yeah, I think in terms of the defence and nullifying City, that was done to perfection. And don't even think Amanda touched the ball, but it's still a sub that Renee is probably going to make to sort of solidify the game and see it out. And what made me laugh the most, I have to point this out, was there was one moment where Kavaji came on and she tried to send Lotta Moy running up the wing in the dying minutes of the game, and I thought, oh, that's incredible game management. That your centre backs going up the wing, and she just kind of left it and went back to centre back. But that's kind of how Arsenal have done what they've done a lot better recently, I think, in terms of seeing games out, finishing chances, going 2-3, 4-0 up. Yes, we conceded some goals we wouldn't have liked to concede yesterday. We won't talk about one of them in particular, but the other two that we conceded a mistake and kind of not really closing down the cross. It hasn't happened often, so you've got to give Arsenal credit in that sense. And defensively, I still think we were quite good in that game.
Yeah, the different periods of the game were fascinating because City have struggled defensively, struggled goalkeeping wise. Arsenal knew they were a bit limited in attack, but also knew attack would be the best form of defense because they were lacking in midfield. They're, off the ball every time the possession turned over. Aaron Dantino or Chris Bradley were jumping off from the bench, and Aaron in particular was really, really vocal in terms of every time possession got turned over, making sure Arsenal got back into shape, which sort of shows you how makeshift it was, if you like, without having Little or Valti available to start. But with the quick start and such of the goals City have conceded recently, they have become used to having to pick themselves up and get back into games. That was always going to be the story of their season. They've signed so many attacking players. They were always going to look to score more goals than concede, but they've now conceded more than Leicester City, for example, which is quite remarkable, for a team again with title aspirations. But you have to give credit to them because Arsenal obviously go 1-0 up within 43, 42 seconds, I think.
Yeah.
Caldente, nicks the ball off Alexandri, her Spain teammate, and Arsenal's press from kickoff was fantastic. And City have conceded a lot from kickoff, so whether it's the start of the first or second half, after restarts as well, when they've scored and then the other teams, gone up and got one back, and we saw that on Sunday as well. Saw it in the Manchester derby and against Aston Villa. So I think Arsenal would have been more than aware of that. But they were pressing in sort of a 4-1-4-1 straight from kickoff. Rushing over. It's a great finish by Caldente. One of the only real composed finishes that we saw. Obviously, a brilliant header by Wubben-Moy, a really brave header, great ball in from Kyra. For me, if Stina then scores at 3-0, I know there's still 80 minutes to go, but I think you probably kill the game off there. I
Yeah.
think putting that wide and then City finding that control in midfield again, that's when that sort of second phase of the game started. So it was a brilliant start for Arsenal, but there is such a thing sometimes as well as scoring too early. And I think Arsenal did find that out after that Blackstenius chance went wide.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was a different kind of. I imagine, obviously, like you say, Rene would have planned for Arsenal to press quite quickly and try and catch City out. Whether they actually imagined that would happen and they would get the goal, I don't know, because I felt the exact same. I thought when we went 2-0 up, even 1-0 up, straight away we kind of just went, oh, we're 1-0, 2-0 up. What do we do now? And we'd kind of let off a little bit. And that encouraged City, I think, to push, like you say, back into the game. They started to get control of the midfield. I thought Miedema had her chances. She put one wide, and Rod put one wide, I think, as well. And Daphne kept us in the game at times with the saves that she made. So Arsenal obviously did stay switched on, but there were moments, like you say, where we became a bit complacent. We became a bit grateful for the lead that we had. And I do worry when Arsenal, go 1-0, 2-0 up, that we don't control the game, especially against tougher opponents. We go to the likes of Bristol City and Palace, and we can do that because they don't take their chances. But Manchester City, I think, did, and obviously did miss a couple as well, just like we did. But you can't discredit for them for that. They got the goals back into the game, and like you say, it's a game of trying to outscore the other. Should Arsenal be looking for more, maybe in terms of fixing the defensive mistakes potentially? But you can only say that potentially on Sunday, on Thursday, sorry, as well. That's going to be slightly different defense to what we saw again, a slightly different team even. So things are sometimes you have to kind of make up with the players that you've got. Try and do the best that you can. But I do think Arsenal sort of grabbed that midfield a little bit more in the second half, and I think a lot of that deserves credit to Leah Volti, who I do think didn't get enough credit for changing the game in the way that she did.
Yeah, and I didn't mind the fact as well that Mariona stayed on, because I thought there are still goals in this game. There's still the opportunity, as we saw, for Arsenal to go forward and create more, and Mariona was able to do that. Of course, Fouty just, sat in the midfield. What I liked is she went long at the right time as well. She
Yeah,
found the opportunity to actually pop the ball over the top, and again, game management helping Arsenal make the right decisions. But I think you did need a Mariona. There were still goals to be found,
yeah,
still opportunities to drive forward on the ball, and I thought she did really well. Again, in a slightly unfamiliar position, she's very versatile, as we know, very experienced, and credit to Kyra, who's just playing with every different midfielder and continuing
yeah.
to excel. But Mariona just seems to show all of her experience, and again, she works incredibly hard. She is so hungry on and off the ball, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And I also want to add as well, like obviously she couldn't play in a game like this and in that specific game, and she can't play unfortunately for the next two. But moments like that in the games going forward for the rest of the season, that would suit Chloe Kelly extremely well. To be able to bring somebody like that on who, the likes of Wally or Kyra can play a ball over the top to and say, just absolutely go for it. She's going to be as hungry as the likes of Mariona, I feel as well. So that's definitely going to benefit Arsenal to have that option and, not obviously have to tire out Mariona for 90 minutes every single week because she's our only option. So it's great to have that and it's great to have that as an option. Just a shame that we couldn't use it against Manchester City because we probably would have loved that very much.
So looking at that chaos then in the second half, Mariona, as much as we praised her, makes her mistake, obviously gives the ball away and Mars there to slam it home. I think
Yeah.
we're pretty much going to have to get used to the fact that she is always going to score against us and, that's going to be how it is. She obviously scored two great goals against Villa as well the week before, so is in form. Again, City switch off from kickoff. This is a really, really good goal because Marnham sort of starts the move off and then I think Mead finds Mariona. She pops the ball in behind, and it's a really good finish again, and great celebration in front of the away fans. And then 4 minutes later, well, let's give the Marnham goal a chance to shine because I think the football for that and for Stina's winner is absolutely fantastic. Arsenal just linking up on the break, playing those 1 and 2 touch passes. It was so good to watch.
Yeah, and I think obviously you mentioned a little bit earlier about the finishing. Obviously, Mariona's was fantastic. Wimber Moyes came from a great set piece. I actually thought the finish from Marnham was great. I know it's obviously you've got Keating in front of you who's not 100% confident, but she sort of steps out a little bit and it opens up the chance for Marnham to slot that into the bottom left, I think. I'm trying to remember now. But yeah, I think obviously we know what Mariona can do as well in terms of playing those balls in behind. But the run, obviously, we were getting frustrated because the lineswoman had called offside about 40 times before that. So I do think I sort of saw the goal go in and turned to her straight away, waiting for the flag to go up. But to time that run in, into the box, the weight of the pass to be perfect, a lot goes into that goal. And again with the Steiner goal as well, I think Mead playing that ball across 3 or 4 players past Keating and straight onto the for Steiner to finish. It seems like it's quite an easy chance, but I don't actually think it is. Watching the game back and the one that Steiner sort of managed to put wide was an easier finish, I thought, than the ball that came across from me the second time. So it's yeah, frustrating that she did miss that chance, but she stayed in the game and she got, the reward in the end. And I think most people would have maybe looked at that and thought, why is Renee not taking Stina off? I'm sure a lot of people were having that discussion, but she stayed on and ultimately that's what got Arsenal the winner. So clearly Renee saw something there that, we don't quite have that level to think like that just yet.
It's hard with Stina, isn't it? Because she isn't afforded the luxury of regular football because of how well Alessia has done. And you look at Russo turning it around under Slager's, being backed by the manager, having all of those starts, being made the first choice striker. And obviously, Blackstenius doesn't have that opportunity because of how well Russo has done, but also maybe she didn't take her chances towards the start of the season. And there are almost elements of the chances Russo was missing in
Yeah,
Stina's performance on Sunday, and it does show how much of a confidence thing it is. But every time she seems to have time in front of goal and space to run into, that seems to be when she makes the wrong decisions.
yeah.
And it's quite interesting to see how much Russo's worked on that. But Blackstenius' goal, obviously, the winner is instinctive. I thought Kanak did really well, but there were too many times when Blackstenius would give the defence a chance to get back and put the tackle in. And even that one where she sprinted down the left-hand side and Keating came flying out, as she did quite a lot. Even there, you think, do you have the confidence to pick out the pass or even maybe go for goal? And in the end, it went out for a goal kick. But just that killer instinct, continues to lack for Blackstenius. But she was in all the right places again. But I think Arsenal will be relieved she got the winner. And of course, she gets the headlines there. But she could have put the game to bed, I think, at 3-3 and obviously at 2-0 as well.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and also I was wondering if it was a Blackstenius thing or if it was an Arsenal thing because there was other moments I think in games we saw. I want to point out Marnham's goal. I think it was against Brighton when we went in the week in the cup where Mariona basically drove into the box and sort of passed it to Marnham, and it was Marnham who slotted it home. Arsenal always look for that pass, and I think there was a moment in the game against Manchester City. I've only just recalled it now, but Mariona was basically in front of Keating and she looked for the pass, and City intercepted and cleared it away, and to us that looked like a clear chance for her to fire it into goal, and she sort of stopped and looked for the pass. So I do think in certain situations it's maybe sort of the way that Rene wants to play, lots of passes, not so similar to the way that Jonas played because a lot of that was passing around the box. This is the final pass in the box, I think. Sometimes it works perfectly, sometimes it doesn't, and I wonder if maybe that's kind of in some way a combination of, like you say, confidence of Blackstenius, but also the philosophy of the way that Arsenal have been playing. It's always been, Russo running in behind, pulling it back to McCabe who's in the box somehow. It's that final decision has always kind of gone one way or the other, and it worked on many occasions for Arsenal against City, and also it hindered them from scoring more as well at the same time, which I find really interesting as well, because is that part of the philosophy or is that just the players and how they like to play?
Mm. We'll wrap up on the game in a second by talking about the penalty, but just a word for Beth Mead. That cross for Blackstenius's winning goal, I thought she linked up possession really well, and then I think she's got more assists. I think it was her 47th WSL assist. I think she's the highest ever WSL assister. I might be wrong on that, but she was just excellent, wasn't she? And Beth
Yeah.
Mead, there were some real glimpses of her best form.
Yeah, look, there's going to be a lot of talk, isn't there, about Arsenal wingers there. It's been one of the positions that we've discussed in the transfer window and obviously in bringing Chloe Kelly in as well. But necessarily it doesn't mean that, someone can just come in and just take that position. And I don't think we have at times this season seen the best of Beth Mead. But if I'm looking and honestly at the last three performances, Chelsea, she impressed me against Bristol in the cup, she really impressed me. And again, yesterday, she impressed me. She has her moments. She has her periods in the season. I think we saw that last season as well. She came kind of back in and just found her goal scoring form in and around the box. So she's overall a fantastic player. And I don't think we should just kind of write her off in any sense. I think there's so much more to see. And I'm interested to see kind of how Rene manages that in terms of wingers, who's going to play, how she rotates. But yeah, another fantastic performance.
Yeah, Arsenal getting the win without Ford, McCabe, and Little in terms of those main three who are out now. But of course, Pullover to come back, Hurtig. I'm not sure what the situation is there. So certainly good signs for Arsenal. Let's finish up on the game in terms of talking about the penalty. I've watched back the incident a load, and as much as the assistant has a really good view, she also stops at one point, stops running when Catley Fagino just gets the wrong side of Catley, and at that point the assistant stops running, and Fagino must get 5-10 yards before then she sort of tries to catch up. So as much as I think she's got a really good view, I think she actually doesn't help herself get in the right position there. But I don't know, watching it back, if the referee did communicate with the assistant, or if the assistant, wasn't brave enough to raise what she saw with the referee, because, that the first thing the referee has to ask her is going over to her assistant, and obviously they've got the earpiece in, but I cannot understand between them how they have made this decision, because the assistant is in such a good position. If she thought it was a penalty, then there's big issues on her part, in terms of why was she not in line, why she made that decision. But if the referee didn't consult with her, or if she wasn't brave enough to speak up, it's just another howler, really. This is a really bad decision.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think we'd be going over this probably for the entire podcast episode had that cost Arsenal the game and had they not got the winner in the end, because it's another decision that's proven to be kind of controversial and even more controversial, I think, than the performance that we saw from Emily Heaslip. So the fact that you're giving Emily Heaslip a run for her money is incredible, but I think I can't understand it either. There's almost a pause between the referee kind of deciding that it's a penalty, and then she stops and Fagino kind of dives into the box, and there's a little bit of time in between before she eventually says penalty. So I can't understand it either. I haven't watched kind of the behaviour of the referee slash lineswoman back. I haven't seen that. I've seen the zoomed in clip of Catley making minimal contact on nowhere near kind of the box. So again, it's a tough decision, and obviously that brings people who think that there should be the likes of VAR and things like that. But overall, it's still kind of putting major kind of question marks about the quality of refereeing that's happening in the best league in or one of the best leagues in women's football. So we can't keep having decisions like this, especially in big games, dictating results. Ultimately potentially decisions that happened in the Chelsea game cost us that game. And again, against City, it could have cost us the game there. And obviously, dropping points against City would have been huge. So many question marks about the overall quality of referees. And
Mm.
it always seems like we're at the. I say that, but then I did think back to that Hannah Hampton one that Chelsea got where the ball apparently crossed the line and didn't. Things like that are quite costly in the grand scheme of things, especially if it's the winner or if it's the equaliser in a game of that magnitude.
Yeah, as I said last week, and everyone in the comments seemed to completely ignore, I could completely understand why the penalty was given on first viewing for Emily Heaslip against
Yeah.
Arsenal for Chelsea. This one I cannot understand.
No.
I simply cannot understand it. So yeah, as you say, luckily it didn't cost Arsenal the game. And look, just to summarise, with what Arsenal had available, you'd like to think the squad with Nighswonger getting to full fitness once Kelly becomes available, you'd hope the squad isn't that bare from now until the rest of the season. And, league-wise, the fixture schedule eases off nicely now that City and Chelsea put to bed. We've got United on the final day. That felt like quite a landmark win to push on from.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously we've got kind of we're getting towards the exciting part of cup tournaments. Obviously that's still a huge game on Thursday. We can't kind of ignore that. But you're right, once we play Tottenham at the Emirates, it does kind of become somewhat of an easier run. Obviously, I hope that no one else kind of gets injured, but I do. The only thing that raises sort of concerns for me is the key players in the Arsenal squad that I don't think we can replace. We've tried to cope without Katie McCabe, but then if you consider the likes of Emily Fox, Kyra Cooney-Cross, even Russo as well. If anything happens there, Arsenal are kind of really going to struggle towards the end of the season. Obviously, you can't just buy a million players in the same position unless you're Chelsea, just to cover the fact that somebody might get injured. But that is a big concern for Arsenal that it got to that point in the season where they just didn't have the options. And it's the same old story, right? We've had it before. We've had it with recruitment. We've had it with players in certain positions they're not being the cover there that we need. And it might come back to cost Arsenal at times. So that's the only concern that I've really got now, and hopefully we can keep everybody fit and manage minutes as much as possible.
So, City again in the Subway Cup semi-final on Thursday night. Of course, City won the quarter-final a few days after losing to Manchester United at the Etihad, so I don't really like that omen. Potentially, Arsenal will have Ford back. We'll find out tomorrow in Renee Slager's press conference. Katie McCabe will be available. Obviously, Chloe Kelly cannot play against her parent club, so Arsenal are boosted in terms of players coming back. Never great to play a team in quick succession,
Yeah.
especially one of the bigger ones in the WSL. But Arsenal at home at Meadow Park. Um, I'm feeling fairly confident for this, for a place in the Subway Cup final, just because of what Arsenal have done without some of these key players. And if Valti's a bit more fit, as I say, McCabe and Ford potentially, Arsenal should go into this in quite a good position.
Yeah, I think in terms of Meadow Park as well, I touched to this before. I think it's a huge advantage for Arsenal, not just because of them wanting to play well for themselves, but also for the City defence. I think you don't just fix confidence overnight. We've seen that with key players, Alexandri Keating, even the others who have had their moments as well. That's not going to kind of be fixed overnight, especially in the space of 3, 4 days since the last game. And if you're coming up against a crowd that is quite frankly against you, it can cost you, and that is concerning for Manchester City. I'm interested to see if we get Kiara Keating on Thursday. I'm not sure about that. I don't think she'll be back in goal, not just because of confidence or anything like that or performance by any means, but because of decisions in terms of cups and who plays and which goalkeeper's going to play. So that's going to be different. Interested to see as well what City do in terms of changing the lineup. I hadn't looked to see how much they changed their lineup between the United and the two United games, but they've obviously got the likes of Carolyn, Bunny Shaw. Are they going to kind of bring those players in, or are they going to have them do a similar role to what they did at the weekend, coming off the bench. So interesting to see that. But obviously, like you said, the other side of that, how do Arsenal manage that? Do they put their strongest side out? In my opinion, yes, because obviously they've got the benefit of playing London City Lionesses, which they can do a little bit more rotation in that sense. A question that somebody said about goalkeepers: do Arsenal kind of stick with Van Domselaar? Obviously, Manu has played the cup games, but is this kind of a game where Van Domselaar comes in? And that's obviously an interesting thing to consider as well.
Yeah, it's hard in the Subway Cup as well because those cup competitions when you stick with your second choice goalie the whole way through and then maybe you play with them in the final. It's quite different in this when you've only got a quarter final, semi-final, and final. So, yeah, I'm trying to think what they did last year because I feel like D'Angelo played a couple, but did Zinsberger play in the final?
She did,
Um,
yeah.
he did. So yeah, that is an interesting decision. I think. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And Renee, we know, she can be kindly ruthless, I'd say, how I phrase it with player selection. So that is a big call. Obviously, Zinsberger's experience, but Van Domselaar, another really good acrobatic save on Sunday. The angle on TV, it looked like it was drifting wide, but I think it's still a really good stop, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on that as well. Just to finish up, because I think there's only so much we can add, about the Subway Cup, apart from the fact that Subway are doing some kind of deal with the Arsenal Women's Supporters Club, which is fantastic. They finally woken up and seen what Continental Tires are able to do and the legacy you can have. But let's talk about Arsenal's two deadline day signings. Now, when the Nighswonger news came through, I was in a pub that had signs everywhere about, have a beer with people. I was out for lunch and there were signs everywhere going, have a beer with people, don't go on your phone. And I thought, yeah, I'm really up for that. Nice bit of digital detox. We leave at 5-2, and there's the email from Arsenal going, Jenna Nighswonger joins Arsenal. And I thought, well, as much as I love the idea of a digital detox pub, I could have really, really done with checking my phone an hour ago. But really pleased to see that signing. 24 years of age, a lot of potential there. And I think the headline is probably versatility, as you wrote about in your Substack a couple of days ago.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you're never gonna kind of downplay it or criticize a signing of that nature. I think she's got potential. She's proven that she's got the experience. She's done really well as a youngster in the league, and obviously she's had a little bit of experience with the national team. Yeah, I spoke a bit about the different positions that she's played. Obviously, the one question mark that people had raised was her defense, how good she was defensively. Could she adapt to kind of playing in a league of this of caliber? But she's got the support of being able to kind of be integrated into that team. She mentioned learning from McCabe. Hopefully, she means in terms of performing and not behaviour. No more red cards on in that sense. But I do think, yeah, she's a great signing. She's got the ability and the potential to grow into it as well. This is a thing with being a journalist. You can't really have a detox because you miss the likes of, like, I was sat in a Wagamama's when I got the Sky Sports notification that Arsenal had had a bid accepted for Chloe Kelly after no activity all day. You just cannot turn your phone off on deadline day. It just doesn't happen because some group chat will tell you anyway, so you can't avoid it either. I was expecting her to maybe do a sneaky little signing for Manchester United, and I was like, right, I'm gonna have to put my phone on Do Not Disturb and just ignore that. But obviously worked out in our favour in the end. So yeah, great signings across the board, and obviously we'll probably touch on Chloe Kelly as well.
I'm really pleased with Chloe Kelly because I just think from a player perspective, the fact she's come out and said, I need to move away from Manchester City now. I need to go now because I want to continue to have the best possible chance of starting as many games as possible at the Euros. Of course, she was the hero of the last Euros in terms of that winning goal that's put her right into the public eye. And obviously, a few years later, it's not worked out for her at Manchester City. She's talked about a falling out or one individual. You can obviously take guesses at who that might be. And their behaviour obviously restricting her minutes. She played a good sort of 20, I want to say between 20 and 25 games last season, 8 goals in 30 games in all competitions last season. This season she's started once in the WSL, so that doesn't just happen overnight. And I've been a bit surprised that Fajino's been preferred to her instead. Obviously she was excellent on Sunday, but still you'd expect a player like Chloe Kelly to have more minutes. But the key thing here is that Kelly turned down Brighton, and I thought that's really bold because if you get stuck at City now and you don't make the Euro squad after turning down some WSL minutes, minutes where you'd be a regular starter. Instead, she's gone to a club where she's not going to start every week, where she's not going to walk into the team where there are good players in front of her, but she still believes that this is her best option to get as much football as possible and, to get into Serena Wiegmann's plans for the Euros. She's got a massive point to prove here and she knows she's going to have to work for it. That's not always the case with lone players. So I don't see how this can fail, to be honest. And if it does fail, she returns to Manchester City. It's that easy.
Yeah, I think there's obviously been lots of talk about the signing, kind of how it's benefited both parties that are involved. I wrote a little bit about that in mine, and I just read Tim's this morning that talked about, this is great for both people, for both parties. It's great for everybody involved. Chloe Kelly gets to return to a club that is going to show her unlimited love and support. Already calling for her to get a lifetime contract, and already thought of 6 different chants that we can sing for her when she does get to play. But she seemed to, I think the media team handled it extremely well as well, the way that they portrayed it. She's coming home. Here's a picture of her with Win. This is her club that she obviously left to go. She only left to get more minutes, kind of thing, and really portraying it as a place where she will be supported. She will be with players that she knows, a club that she knows, a style of football that suits her, a female manager who can kind of guide her through it. And obviously, the flip side, Arsenal needed a winger. We were talking about what the big signing might be from Arsenal in the summer. Maybe we'll go in for Trinity Rodman, or we'll go in for a big winger from abroad. But realistically, Arsenal can't afford to wait that long, and they couldn't afford to wait. Chelsea did their business when they needed to. They could have waited for Kira Walsh. They made that signing quickly. They could have waited and seen how, defensively getting Buchanan back. No, they bought Germa. So it's Arsenal just cannot afford to wait till the end of the season to bring in a winger. They need pace, they need versatility, they need rotation, and a hungry player who's got a point to prove, who's coming in. She's still Chloe Kelly at the end of the day. She's had her moment. She's a class player, and it really, I agree with you. It doesn't look like it can fail. I'll be surprised if it does. The only frustration I think really is that she just hasn't been able to play because of the circumstances.
Yeah, yeah, you've got two players in her and Nighswonger, who I know Nighswonger was at the US's training camp, but they both can't come in and make an immediate impact because of, different circumstances. And obviously it's annoying for Arsenal that their first 2 games after Kelly comes in are both against City and then an FA Cup one where she's cup tied. But the feeling from those at Arsenal is that it could really help in terms of getting more bums on seats for that North London derby, and there are still hopes from those at the club that could still sell out for next weekend. I think it is now. So yeah, good news all round. And as we say, her iconic celebration, getting her into Arsenal. We joke a lot about, we need to get the Lionesses in and everything, but marketing wise, it's worked an absolute treat. And you've got a player, as you say, who's come back in and wants to be here and has, unfinished business as well at Arsenal. So really looking forward to see what she can do. She's quick, she's direct, and I think her finishing is quite underrated as well. She's really good in and around the penalty area. And, last season when Bunny Shaw was putting the goals in, she had Lauren Hemp on one side and Chloe Kelly on the other. So obviously you look at Alessia Russo up front, getting more service to her.
Yeah.
I think it's only good news. And I bet everyone is just excited. If she's unleashed against Tottenham at the Emirates in front of a bumper crowd, then it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if she starts that game or if she's kind of brought on as an impact sub. I guess obviously it depends on how Arsenal manage the next 2 games in between. Like I say, it is a shame that she can't play against London City Lionesses. It would have been nice to get her at Meadow Park, for her to feel kind of the atmosphere and obviously the fans to get behind her. It would have been even better if she could have played against City, obviously, but that's kind of impossible in that sense. But yeah, really excited for that one, and so much potential, and obviously a point to prove, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. She wasn't there on Sunday, I'm told. I think she watched from home because I'm sure she was in the process of finding somewhere to
Yeah.
live back down near London anyway. Daisy, great to chat. I mean, what a game to get stuck into. I bet you enjoyed that in the away, and you took your mum as well, didn't you? How did she
Yeah.
find it?
Yeah, she loved it. She actually must have been doing her homework because she knew a lot of the chants. She was singing along. Yeah, she loved it. And what a game! I said to her, "What a game that you've got!" Because at the amount of games that I've been to, especially obviously last season and the start of the season, where I've thought, "What am I doing here in the rain, losing 2-1 to Chelsea at the Emirates?" And she gets to go to Manchester City for her first game and watch the 4-3 thriller. Where it's such a big game and a lot obviously positive to come from it. She's definitely up for more, so you never know. We might be seeing her at the Emirates very soon, and she'll soon be part of the supporters club. She'll just make her way in like that. But yeah, fantastic day as per usual, and looking forward to the two games this week as well. I think Meadow Park has been quite special this season, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think when it's a 12 p.m. kickoff as well, I was nearly at the ground at half 9, which just felt completely wrong. Getting out of bed at 6 o'clock, and I texted my dad, and he was going, what on earth are you doing up so early?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's the 12 o'clock kickoff." But in the end, getting back and watching the men as well, it was a really good Sunday. So we'll leave it there. Daisy, thanks as ever for joining me. Great to chat.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much.